storytelling, I think we all agree, is important. We're all doing great science, we're all doing great work, but that work, until it can be elevated, is not as important. The more eyes we get on the work or knowledge, the more valuable that is. And I think we're all inherently storytellers, because we know that a story can affect change and influence opinion. It can create awareness. And by combining text and multimedia and maps, those can be an integral part of storytelling. So ArcGIS story maps help you leverage living atlas content, your own work, custom maps that can be used along with text and multimedia to inform and inspire people about a particular topic. So they're used for education, for activism, for entertainment, for instruction, for briefings, and a whole lot more. One of the things that I'd like to show here on this site is, this is storymaps.arcgis.com, and if you're not familiar with it, I welcome everybody to go there. Maybe Sean, or I'm sorry, Don can drop that in the chat here. But one of the things that we can do immediately at this site is just begin to explore the different stories. And you'll find stories that cover a broad range of topics. And you'll see that they can be organized into different topics as well. Here's the editor's picks, meaning Alan, Carol, and the StoryMaps team have kind of chosen some which they think are particularly interesting. Obviously, COVID is one of the topics today, but I thought this one was an interesting collection. This is from National Geographic Explorers that have been using story maps, and we've done quite a lot of work with them to tell stories about the various projects that they're involved in, and what the meaning of those is, and using these to elevate and educate others. So this, actually what you're looking at here right now, is called a story collection. So you can organize stories and other things into these little albums, and I'll just explore a couple of these. So one of the ones that I wanted to take a quick look at is, I think it's one of my favorite, just because it's an interesting topic to me, and it has some really great multimedia and maps. And this was when Alex Tate, who's with National Geographic, he went to Everest and did some work there with mapping and creating some really interesting information products. This story, a story map can incorporate lots of different things, and you can see here we have a 3D representation which I can interact with to gain a better idea of what the area is like. So this is called a scene, and we can bring those in. Of course, we can bring in graphics and text, and we can also organize that in different ways. So one way to think about a story map is you use building blocks to assemble it, and there's different kinds of building blocks. What you're looking at here is something called a sidecar. So it's got something on the side, which in this case is a photograph and text, and on the other side, it's got, in this case, a 3D map that we can interact with. And I can just sort of scroll down through this, and I can read the text, and I can also look at other things that are happening on the right-hand side there. You can browse this on your own, but it's really it's a compelling story. One of the things I really like is some of the video, drone captured video that was flown, which really draws someone into this story. And I think this is part of the tradecraft of storytelling. There's tradecraft with GIS, and there's tradecraft with storytelling, and sometimes they're actually quite different. Some of the best GIS folks struggle to tell great stories, but yet some of the very best storytellers struggle with GIS, of course. But anyway, let's move on here just a little bit. Let's go on and take a look. This is a collection I brought together. I just wanted to show one more example of an interesting story map before we build one. So this works with ocean content. It opens up with some graphics which help educate us about the different zones in the ocean. It's got some really interesting little videos which help us understand some of the technology that can be used to look below the surface. And of course, we have, this is another example of a sidecar with text and with, in this case, images and videos which appear on the left-hand side. So you can explore these, and they're really entertaining and informative and educational. But let's go ahead and build one, and let's take a look at how to do this. So I've signed in with my ArcGIS account, and you can do this with one of the free accounts, or if you are a member of an organization, you can sign in to storymaps.arcgis.com. And here's some stories that I've worked on. Let's just go ahead and take a quick tour of creating a new story. And one of the great things about this site is that it kind of guides you through the process. You're not kind of left to figure out where to go. It actually helps you. So we can either start from scratch, or here's a little quick start, which helps us begin a story map with a sidecar or a guided tour. And again, these are blocks, building blocks inside a story map that we assemble those with. So let's just go ahead and start from scratch. So here I've begun my story, and I'll add some text. And we can also do things like add graphics. So I can either grab these from URL resources, or I can choose graphics that are local, and I can go ahead and add them to my map. As we work with the design of our story, we can do different things. We can position these graphics in different ways. So you can see at the click of a button, I can make it immersive, or I can kind of make it less so, or I can push things off to the side. As I begin telling my story, I'm guided to what to add. So here are the different blocks I can add. I can add text, I can add images, I can add audio, I can embed other applications. The example I'll show you will embed some of the examples that are in the indicators of the planet that Sean just showed. And there's lots of different little building blocks. We can embed maps, and there's a new kind of map which is really simple to create called a express map. But anyway, this just sort of guides you through the topic. Besides that, we can also control the basic design and layout. So we can choose different ones, and these actually impact lots of things, fonts and font colors, even the map colors and so forth. And you can even create your custom theme. So if you want to have a National Geographic theme, or a pristine seas theme, you can develop your own. But let's go back to my stories, and I've begun working on a little story here which I'll use as a template to take us through the rest of this. So this is my story about pristine seas, and I've started this with a little graphic, and we can edit the story and begin working with things interactively. So one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to let's go ahead and replace this image with something a little more interesting. And in this case, what I did is I grabbed a video, which I'll be able to drop into the map here. Actually, before I do that, let me show what I sort of modeled. I began by looking at the pristine seas here in National Geographic, and this is kind of what I kind of modeled my story after. So I saw we had a little video and we had some text. I borrowed some of that text, and there's also a little spinning globe here which shows those areas that Enrique talked about that are either protected or not. And so when I began this, I started by inserting the text and inserting graphics. Here's the little globe that I created from those locations, and we can interact with it, and we can spin it around. I can click on locations and view pop-ups. I can view larger size images, and I can also follow links here that take us to other locations. So I kind of mirrored this from what I saw at that Pristine Seas website with National Geographic. But you can see I can add a map, and we can add text, and we can add graphics. This is a sidecar that I use to use some of the images that I saw there and tell some of the stories over on the left. Any of these can be modified any way that I like. For example, if I want to move the text over onto the other side, it's just a click of a button. And if I want to change the way this behaves, I just click this to change the layout. So right now we have what's called a dock panel layout. If I want to change to a different one, now I've got a more immersive experience where the photograph in the background kind of takes over the entire background. We can embed video. So I discovered this video on the National Geographic site. So we can use this and have this go through things. And I'm thinking you can hear audio, perhaps not, but I can definitely hear the audio from that video through my headset. If I want to go include maps, I can do that in a bunch of different ways. Sean showed the Living Atlas of the world site, one of the things I might want to do is just browse there and look for something that I might want to include in my story. So let's look for oceans. I'll choose maps as my content type. And an easy way for me to get started is just to favorite that. So anything I find there, I can favorite. Now when I go back, I can go ahead and choose to add a map block, and I can see that that map that I just favorited. I can just kind of grab that, and I can work with it a little bit. I can change titles. I can change where I've zoomed in or zoomed out. So this is an ArcGIS map that I found in a Living Atlas that I've just added to my story. Other things that we can do, there it is in my story. Other things that we can do, or we can create or add what's called an express map. And this is an express map. And it's just a different kind of map. It's just a very simple map that helps me do simple things simply. So if I want to add an express map, I click the Add Express Map button, and I can begin interactively adding things like a place locator. So I can drag and drop a place and put it on the map, and then I can edit what I see there. So I can add things to the pop-up, I can add images and so forth, and I can add some text to help people understand more about this particular location. So let's go ahead and add an atoll. Obviously that's not where the atoll is located, but you get the idea. We can place these little points on the map. Let's cancel that, and let's discard my work there, and let's go ahead and take a look at a map, a little express map that I've already started. So this is an express map that shows some of the locations of some atolls that I found. So I just added some text, and as I hover over these, or as I click these, I can open those up and get more information. Now, earlier I talked about some of the design elements that we can add, and I just want to show that with this map. An interesting part about StoryMaps is that they help you build and design better maps. So as I change my scheme here, you can see that this express map has actually changed. We've adopted a different base map. We've changed the color on these buttons here and so forth. So as I click each of these, you'll see different styles represented. You'll see some of the fonts change. You'll see other changes. So one of the things that we learned is that if we can help guide people to the proper aesthetic choices, we can build more compelling stories easily. So that's kind of a brief tour of that. Maybe just quickly to wrap things up, let's move on in the story. These are little cards that I've inserted, and these are links to some of the applications that Sean has in the indicators of the planet. This is one called Sea Ice Aware. So I can open up other applications from the context of any story map, and in this case, we can do more exploration with sea ice over time, and we can look at how things have changed through the course of time. Now, in this case, what I did was I opened this up as a little application, but I can also embed that directly in my story. So I can choose a size with which I want to embed that. So it's not just about maps, it's also about applications. So within my story map, there's lots of different things that I can add. Applications are among them, as well as maps and text and media. I think at this point, I don't need to maybe go in any further unless there's some questions that somebody might have about how I created these, or maybe about some of these different blocks that one can add. You can see also here I've added sort of a little navigation bar, which is actually part of our design tool. So there's the navigation bar at the top, and just with a click of a button, I can toggle that off and on.
Well, let's stop there. I think, Sean, you did an excellent job of introducing the concepts of the Living Atlas. And Bernie, you've talked about how one mechanism for how you can view and build apps on top of the Living Atlas, story maps. There's probably over 1 million story maps that have been published, and there's thousands more that are being published every day. So one way to think of this is it's one way to exploit the data, whether it's in your thousands of rasters or in the models, to tell stories. It's connecting science to the public, which is one of the big jobs, obviously, that has to be done.